You can get a lot of mileage from lying to the reader. But don't worry, your flawless reputation for integrity can remain intact, for it won't be you lying to the reader, it will be your narrator. The unreliable narrator can be relied upon to always deliver accurate, unbiased information to the reader. The events they relate always reflect what actually happened and are not altered to serve their aims in any way. Speaking of altering things to serve aims, consider subscribing to my channel. I do all kinds of hilarious things like giving an unreliable definition for what an unreliable narrator is. Why would you want to miss that? The unreliable narrator is most commonly associated with first-person perspective stories where the character telling the story withholds information or straight up lies to the reader. Though it is possible to have an unreliable narrator in third-person perspective as well, it's significantly less common, and there are people who say that it can't be done, but I think it can be, and we'll discuss that later in the video. If you're considering an unreliable narrator, there are basically three things you need to work out. The reason/motivation for the deception, how the deception will be revealed, and also how the deception works within the perspective of your story. Can you sit like entirely in frame or entirely out of frame, not like directly on the edge? Misleading the reader has some interesting effects. At a fundamental level, they won't trust the narrator, and this will force them to see the story in a different light. Besides just being a good characterization device, this also has the effect of pulling the reader deeper into the story. I think when we know we've been lied to and that the events didn't actually happen the way we thought they did, there's this natural sort of drive to want to discover the truth. It creates this sense of curiosity that might not be there otherwise if we were just reliably getting an account of the events of the story. It's important to point out that an unreliable narrator isn't necessarily devious or ill-intentioned. They could be in denial about their circumstances, their overconfidence might lead them to misjudge situations, or they're just incompetent and don't realize what's actually going on. It's like if you ask a girl out for coffee on Saturday and she says she can't because she's getting her winter tires put on her car, and so you ask her, what about Sunday? And she says she's also getting her winter tires installed on Sunday. And then she tells you that she's getting her winter tires installed every day for the next 6 months and can't go for coffee. It's totally not because she has no interest in dating you. Totally not because of that. I've heard that Toyotas have like an extra latch or something on the tires. She drives a Honda, but whatever. Some folks will argue that you can only have an intentionally unreliable narrator. They don't extend the definition to overconfident or delusional or incompetent narrators. But I think you can extend the definition to the unintentionally unreliable types as well. I think the same rules sort of apply. If you do want to include an unreliable narrator, you'll need to decide why they are unreliable. What is motivating them to lie to the reader? What do they gain from doing so? In first-person perspective, these motives are more clear since you have a character involved in the story, and this involvement could easily give them a reason to lie. This could be for all sorts of reasons. It could be that they committed a crime in the course of the story. It could be that the events of the story make them seem like an ass and they don't want to seem that way. They could be trying to sell the reader something. It's all kinds of reasons. Another important element of the unreliable narrator is revealing the deception, and you do need to somehow reveal the deception or kind of misses the point of the whole thing. You may want to reveal the deception right at the start of the story where you immediately give the reader reasons to distrust the narrator. The narrator might straight up tell them that they are crazy or untrustworthy or that they're lying to them. Though if someone tells you that they're lying, can you really believe them? The other approach is to reveal the deception towards the end. This is more of a twisty sort of ending that, oh, the narrator's been lying to you the whole time. This has the effect of reframing the entire story for the reader. It will suddenly change the tone of the events shared with them up to that point. In this case, it's probably best if you have some hints along the way that foreshadow the unreliability of the narrator. I could see things not working out if the reader fully believes that the narrator is reliable right up to the end, and then the rug is kind of pulled out from under them. That could sort of work, but it's probably best to lay a bit of groundwork. You could, for instance, have them misrecall events. They reference an event earlier in the story, later on in the story, but describe it in a different way. There's some obvious difference. For instance, they might mention firing 2 shots from the revolver at the chandelier when in the actual scene they describe only firing 1. 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. No. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. Not 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus... No. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. It's like any other twist in a story. There needs to be some indication of it, some buildup of it prior to the actual twist. Now to the important question. Can you have an unreliable narrator in a third-person perspective story? Sorry, can they have an unreliable narrator in third person? Most unreliable narrators exist in first-person perspective stories, and there's good reasons for that. In most other perspectives, you don't have a strongly voiced narrator, which means it's hard to motivate the narrator to lie. The narrator in a third limited story is usually not a character, and therefore they generally don't have any motivation to lie, so why would they? I wrote a novella once with a character who lied a lot. Like, I had a rule that what they said in one scene had to directly contradict what happened or what they said in a previous scene. It's a lot of fun to write a character like that, but I don't think that that's an unreliable narrator. That's just a third limited narrator relating events from a character who's very dishonest. If you have a third limited or a third omniscient story where the narrator is very much written as a character, then you can probably do an unreliable narrator. I think it would be really cool to write like a third omniscient story with a narrator who turns out to be causing all of the ills of the characters, and the characters slowly realize that there's some kind of omnipotent force that's causing all of their problems. I may have just described the Old Testament. Anyway, I think that would be interesting. But I think if you get to this point, to write a narrator like that, you almost need first-person perspective elements to them. Like, they will need to refer to themselves at some point. So are you really doing a third-person perspective unreliable narrator, or are you doing a present narrator because you have a first-person narrator who's taking part in the story? It's like by the time you make a third-person narrator strong enough that they would have motivations and reasons and the ability to reveal their deception, they've basically become a character, so they're no longer a narrator, they're some kind of present first-person narrator who's not actually present in the story. Is this some kind of observation around the nature of humanity that in order to deceive, you need to have a mind of your own, and that something like a disembodied third-person narrator is incapable of such a thing because they lack some underlying features of the human mind? Is a rock capable of deception? Can a bacterium be motivated to lie? Is the fact that this video has devolved into talking about this stuff a sign that it's time to end it? For my sake and yours, it is. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.